Hey guys, it's Aman
And Christina
from Our Rich Journey. On today's video, we are talking about generational wealth. Now, Christina and I love this particular topic because this is something that we have been building for a very long time, ever since we started our financial independence journey. And so on today's video, we want to share with you our step-by-step guide for building generational wealth. Because no longer should this be just some buzzword that people throw out there, something that they aspire to create. No, our channel is all about giving you guys information so that you can take action. And in this particular case, by the end of this video, you will be taking action on building generational wealth.
So before we get started, let's first define what we mean by generational wealth. So generational wealth refers to any kind of asset that families pass on to their children or grandchildren. But it doesn't have to stop there. Your children will then pass on their generational wealth to their children and grandchildren, and so on and so on. So it can be multi-levels in terms of generational wealth that is passed down.
And so if you know our story, you know that we have two young daughters, and our plan is to pass on our generational wealth to them, and hopefully they can grow that same wealth and pass it on to their children, to their grandchildren, and so on and so on. This idea of generational wealth is such a powerful concept to understand early on in your wealth building phase, because the decisions that you make now could have implications for hundreds of years. Imagine that. Imagine 200 years from now that your family is able to identify where the wealth began. And maybe it began with you, maybe it began with your parents, but at some point they can be able to identify this daisy chain of wealth that was created.
So let's get started and let's talk about how to build that generational wealth. And the first step is having a shift in the family's mindset. So let's talk about how you may be thinking about growing your wealth now. You may be thinking just about wealth to support you or sustain you throughout your lifetime. But when you're thinking about generational wealth, that mindset has to shift. Not only are you thinking about how to support yourself, but you're thinking about how to support your kids in the future with your assets, how your kids can support their kids in the future with the assets that you build so that they can build them even more. The idea is not thinking just in the present. It's about shifting your mindset so you think about so many different generations in the future.
Now, this is going to be a challenge for a lot of people because most people are caught up in their day-to-day lives. But when you make this shift to think generations ahead of you, this will actually benefit you in the present, because the decisions that you make will involve patience. And this is something that many people fail to realize is an important part of building wealth. When you are building wealth as a long-term investor, as a person with patience, a person that has consistency in what they are doing because they are keeping the ultimate goal in mind, which is generational wealth, you make better investment decisions. You make better decisions as far as building your wealth. So let's talk about step 2. If you are talking about generational wealth, you must be investing for growth. Now, a lot of people, when they start investing, they are investing for growth at the front of their life. And as they get towards the end of their life, they're investing for preservation. You see it in a stock portfolio where someone is initially starting out investing very aggressively in the stock market, and then as they get towards the end of their life, they make a shift and they start investing more in bonds. But if you are investing for generational wealth, growth is something that you must have in your investment portfolios. Whether it's in the stock market, in real estate, whatever the case may be, you must be focused on growing your wealth.
So the reason why we say this is because preservation with a portfolio results in more conservative types of portfolios. And that means your portfolio value can begin to diminish. And that is not the idea behind generational wealth. Every generation, the portfolio is supposed to be growing, not being reduced in size or not being too conservative that you're just preserving it for the current generation.
And this is a huge problem that we have with the whole retirement investing strategy that is out today. Most people are investing or saving for retirement so that by the end of their life, they have depleted their entire portfolio and they are leaving barely anything to their heirs. But someone that is focused on growing their wealth their entire life will be able to pass on that same growth for generations to come. Now, this brings us to step number 3. You have to have ownership when you are building generational wealth. And what I mean by this, if you look at real estate, for example, you can't rent your way to generational wealth. I know this is a very harsh thing to hear, but in order to really pass on assets, you have to own those assets. You can't be renting them. You can't borrow those assets. You have to own them.
So when we are talking about ownership, we're talking about real estate, stocks, a business, intellectual property, whatever it is, you have to own those assets so that you can pass them on to the next generation so that they can grow those assets and pass those on to the next generation as well.
So let's talk about step number 4, my favorite step, which is start setting the stage now for stewardship. And what we mean by this is that the wealth that you are accumulating now, you can begin to share it with your heirs right now and see how they manage that money themselves. Because this is a great opportunity for you as the master to teach the student that will one day become the master. This is so important and a big reason why we get our girls involved in our investment activities so that they can understand the decisions that we're making to grow our wealth and be stewards of our wealth so that by the time they receive it, they're able to do the same with it.
So one of the really important things about generational wealth is that you take your assets and pass them on to the next generation and that they're able to do the same thing. They're able to grow those assets and pass those on to the next generation as well. But it really starts with education. So if you pass your assets on to the next generation and they have no idea what to do with it or how to build it, then that generational wealth will stop there. It will not continue to grow and be passed on to the next generation. So education is so important. So begin building that education, that financial literacy with your children, with your nieces, your nephews, whoever you plan to pass that money or your assets down to. They have to understand how to manage those assets so that they can grow it and pass that on as well. So our daughters have their own individual investment portfolios, and we're very big on teaching them about the investments in their portfolios and really making sure that they have that financial literacy so that when they get older, they are able to manage their own money. And then when we pass our assets onto them, they can manage that as well. So if you are in the phase where you yourself are trying to learn more about investing in the stock market so you can pass that knowledge down to the next generation, we actually have a stock market investing course. If you are interested in enrolling in that course, we'll leave a link in the description below, or you can also go to ourrichjourney.com.
So let's talk about step number 5, entrepreneurship. This is something that you must instill in the next generation because entrepreneurship, at the root of it, is all about making money. And this is a skill that generations will need in order to continue to grow wealth. You see, entrepreneurs are resourceful. They are leaders. They are problem solvers. These are all skills that are very important to growing your wealth.
And this is so very important because remember, generational wealth is not about preserving your wealth, it's about growing your wealth. So if you are teaching the next generation about how to be stewards with their money, about how to use these entrepreneur skills where they can learn how to grow more money, that is the idea behind generational wealth.
So let's talk about step 6. Step 6 is understanding the mechanisms or tools used to transfer wealth. So this means getting an understanding of wills, trusts, insurance, all of these different mechanisms that you can use in order to pass that wealth on.
And what's really important about this step is that you can do this now. You don't have to wait until you're much older in order to understand these options because you don't want to build up all of these assets and not have the mechanisms in place to transfer those assets to the next generation.
And the final step, and this is the most important because in this step, you're going to give the next generation the recipe for success by being a great storyteller. And what I mean by this is that all of the decisions that you are making right now to build wealth, you have to be able to pass on those processes to the next generation. They should understand all of the trials and tribulations that you are going through now so that they don't have to make those same mistakes.
And I think this is really important because throughout our journey and also on our YouTube channel, we found that a lot of people have problems talking about money. But if you can't talk about money, if you can't share your story with how you grew your money or problems with how you grew your money, then you can't pass those lessons on to the next generation so that they can improve the processes that you went through when you were growing your wealth. Storytelling is an essential aspect to growing generational wealth, so practice now on your storytelling skills.
And I get so excited thinking about the stories that our great-great-grandchildren will tell about me and Christina when they are all sitting around the fireplace and they're talking about our great-great-grandparents, Amon and Christina, they did this, they did that. They planted the seed of all of this. And we just get so choked up thinking about that because we know what we are doing now will have impacts for hundreds of years to come. And we hope that everyone that is watching this can learn to embody that type of mentality. Because if you are pursuing financial independence, if you are investing for the long term, you have an opportunity to really build generational wealth. And we hope that this video has given you food for thought as usual, but also has changed your mindset just a bit to think way beyond your lifetime or the lifetime of your own children, but to think for generations and generations to come. And so if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and join the journey.